I wore my dress uniform to the town's Veterans Honor Dinner and watched my parents receive an award for community service. 3 hours earlier, they'd slapped me when I refused to hand over $15,000. They called the bank, trying to withdraw money using my name. When the stage lights came on, I didn't say much, I just played the evidence. The entire civic center fell silent as my mother's recorded voice echoed through the speakers. She owes us from the moment she was born. That's when the state fraud investigators stepped forward with the warrants. My name is Lauren Hale, and for 32 years, I've been my family's personal ATM. That Saturday morning in Ash Grove started like any other Appalachian drizzle tapping against the kitchen window, the smell of slightly burnt coffee mixing with the damp pine air that seeped through the old apartment's walls. My uniform hung over the back of a chair, still crisp from yesterday's pressing. I sat at my small dining table with my spiral notebook, tallying expenses like I did every month. The numbers never lied. Dad's insurance payment, $800. Mom's overdue electric bill, $340. Ethan's mobile car wash startup loan, the third one this year, $2,000. My own groceries for the month, $150. The pen scratched against paper as I calculated what remained of my sergeant's pay after everyone else got their cut. Being a tactical medic at Pine Ridge Training Center meant I'd learned to triage to assess what needed immediate attention and what could wait. But somehow, with family, everything was always urgent. Everything was always critical, and I was always the cure. The phone buzzed. Mom. Lauren, we need to talk. Come by the house. The drive to my parents' place took me through downtown Ash Grove, past the First County Savings where I'd opened my first account at 16, past Oak Chapel where Mom ran the Sunday school, past the Civic Center where they held their community fundraisers. This town ran on appearances and whispered judgments, and the Hale family had always been good at keeping face. That's what my paychecks had been buying all these years, not groceries or electricity, but reputation. Their house sat on Maple Street, a tired two-story with peeling white paint that Dad never seemed to find time to fix. Despite being a contractor, the air inside hit me immediately, stale cigarette smoke embedded in the curtains, mixing with the musty smell of carpets that hadn't been deep cleaned in years. Mom sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. Dad leaned against the counter, arms crossed, jaw set in that way that meant he'd already decided how this conversation would end. $15,000, Mom said without preamble. We need $15,000. I kept my voice steady. What for? Family emergency, to keep our standing in the community. That's when I noticed the papers partially hidden under Mom's purse, Hometown Heroes Fund letterhead peeking out. Mom was the treasurer of that fund, organizing dinners and raffles for local veterans. My stomach tightened. If it's really an emergency, I'll need to see documentation, bank statements, bills, whatever it is. Dad's face darkened. Since when do you need paperwork to help your family? Since $15,000 is half my savings. Darren. I'd stopped calling him Dad years ago when the requests turned into demands. We fed you, clothed you, kept a roof over your head for 18 years. Mom's voice pitched higher, that familiar guilt trip melody. And this is how you repay us. I stood up. I've been repaying you for 14 years, every month, without question. But $15,000, not without knowing why. Not without receipts. The kitchen fell silent except for the tick of the wall clock, 4:23 p.m. The sound seemed to echo in the space between us, marking the moment everything shifted. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked, and I heard the distant hum of a lawnmower. Normal Saturday sounds in a normal neighborhood, while inside this kitchen, my normal was finally breaking. You ungrateful, Mom started, but I cut her off. I'm setting a boundary. If you need the money for something legitimate, show me the statements. Otherwise, the answer is no. Dad's contractor hands, scarred and thick from years of work, clenched into fists. Mom's fingers tightened around her mug until her knuckles went white, and I stood there in my civilian clothes jeans, a Pine Ridge Training Center t-shirt, sneakers feeling more like a soldier than I ever did in uniform. This was my line in the sand. They'd call it ungrateful. I'd call it 14 years overdue. The slap came fast, Dad's calloused palm connecting with my cheek before I could react. The sound cracked through the kitchen like a gunshot, and for a moment, everything stopped. The wall clock read 4:37 p.m. My vision blurred, not from tears, but from the shock of impact. The left side of my face burned, skin already tightening where his wedding ring had caught my cheekbone. "Sign the transfer," Mom said, her voice cold as she pulled out her phone. "We have your information. We've been on your accounts as emergency contacts for years." My military training kicked in assess, adapt, survive. I reached slowly into my pocket, fingers finding my phone. One tap on the side button, and it started recording. The small action felt like loading a weapon. "You're going to hit me over money." My voice came out steady, eerily calm. The taste of copper touched my tongue where I'd bitten my cheek. "You owe us," Mom hissed, grabbing my wrist, her manicured nails digging into skin. "Every breath you take, every opportunity you've had, we gave you that." She dialed First County Savings on speaker. The hold music, some generic jazz, filled the kitchen while Dad stood over me, blocking the door. I memorized the scene, the coffee-stained calendar on the wall showing October, the pile of unopened bills by the microwave, the way afternoon light caught the dust motes floating between us. "First County Savings. This is Patricia speaking. How may I help you?" "Yes, this is Colleen Hale. I need to make a withdrawal from my daughter's account. She's here with me. I'll need to verify some information. Can you provide the account holder's social security number?" Mom rattled off my social without hesitation. My stomach turned. She continued with my birth date, my mother's maiden name ironically, her own and the street address of my first apartment after basic training. Information I'd given them years ago for emergencies. "And can I speak with Ms. Hale to confirm this transaction?" Mom shoved the phone toward me. Dad's hand moved to my shoulder, squeezing hard enough to hurt. The message was clear. "I'm here," I said carefully, "but I am not authorizing any withdrawal." "You little—" Dad's grip tightened, and Mom yanked the phone back. "She's just confused. She already agreed. We have power of attorney." "Ma'am, I'll need to see documentation for that. Without Ms. Hale's verbal consent, I cannot." Mom hung up and immediately started dialing another number. "Fine. We'll try Blue Ridge Credit Union, or we'll go in person tomorrow. You will sign those papers." "Lauren." I stood up slowly, Dad's hand falling from my shoulder. My face throbbed. I could feel the swelling starting already. The small recording app on my phone showed 12 minutes, 43 seconds and counting. "I'm leaving," I said. "You walk out that door. You're no daughter of mine." Mom spat. "Everyone at Oak Chapel will know what kind of ungrateful child you are. Ethan already knows. The whole family knows." Dad stepped aside, but not before leaning in close enough that I could smell the cigarettes on his breath. "You got everything because of us. Remember that." I made it to my car before my hands started shaking. Sitting in the driver's seat, I took photos, the red mark spreading across my cheek, the crescent indentations from Mom's nails on my wrist. The recording was still running. I saved it to 3 different cloud services before finally stopping it at 18 minutes, 12 seconds. The drive back to my apartment took me past those same landmarks, but they looked different now. First County Savings wasn't just where I'd opened my first account. It was where my parents had just tried to steal $15,000. Oak Chapel wasn't just Mom's church. It was about to become her courtroom of public opinion. I pulled into my parking spot at 5:14 p.m., turned off the engine, and sat in the growing darkness. My phone buzzed with texts from Ethan. "You're selfish. They sacrificed everything for you. You owe them. What kind of sister refuses to help family?" I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the recording to my personal email, labeled it October 12th Kitchen, and created a new folder called Evidence. They'd drawn first blood. They just didn't know yet that I'd been trained to survive much worse than a slap and some guilt trips. And unlike them, I knew how to build a case before firing back. By Sunday morning, the Oak Chapel Facebook group had exploded. Mom had worked fast. Please pray for our family during this difficult time, when your own blood turns their back on you after everything you've sacrificed. 67 reactions, 42 comments. The narrative was already set: ungrateful military daughter abandons family in their time of need. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Text messages from cousins I hadn't heard from in years, church members who'd watched me grow up, Dad's construction crew buddies. Your parents are heartbroken. How could you be so selfish? They gave you everything. Ethan's messages turned darker by the hour. You're dead to this family. Don't show your face at Thanksgiving. You think you're so much better than us with your uniform and your medals. Then, at 11:43 p.m., you owe us. You've always owed us. Time to pay up. Sister. I screenshotted everything. Monday morning, I knocked on Captain Morrison's door at Pine Ridge Training Center. The bruise on my cheek had bloomed into purple and green, impossible to hide even with concealer. Sergeant Hale, what happened to your face? Family situation, sir. I need to request 7 days of personal leave. He studied me for a long moment. Do you need base security-involved military family services? No, sir. I just need time to handle some personal matters. Legally. He approved the leave without further questions, but his eyes lingered on the bruise. If you need resources, Sergeant, we have them. By Tuesday afternoon, I was driving up the winding mountain road to Cedar Run Cabin, a rental property 40 miles outside Ash Grove. The trees pressed close on either side, their leaves burning orange and red in the October sun. No cell service up here unless you knew exactly where to stand. Perfect. The cabin smelled like cedar and old smoke from the fireplace. I set up my laptop on the rough wooden table and connected through my mobile hotspot, slow, but functional. The isolation felt like armor. No unexpected visits, no confrontations. Just me and the investigation I should have started years ago. The Hometown Heroes Fund website showed photos from last year's gala, Mom smiling beside the mayor, presenting oversized checks to veterans' families. Treasurer Colleen Hale has helped raise over $200,000 for our local heroes. I donated to that fund, $500 last Christmas. I started with public records. The fund's tax filings were available online, line by line. I compared the reported expenses with the photos and event announcements on their social media. The Spring Veterans Gala supposedly cost $12,000, but the venue Ash Grove Civic Center posted their rental rates online. Maximum cost for a Saturday night, $2,000. The catering, they'd used Oak Chapel volunteers and potluck donations. My spreadsheet grew. Discrepancies added up. $10,000 here, $7,000 there. Administrative costs that exceeded the IRS guidelines by 300%. And then I founded a vendor payment to Hale Construction Services for event setup and maintenance. $24,000 over 2 years. Dad's company. But I'd helped set up those events myself, folding chairs and card tables from the church. No construction needed. The rain started Wednesday evening, drumming on the cabin's metal roof. I sat wrapped in an old quilt, laptop warm on my legs, digging deeper. Mom's Facebook posts from last spring, new leather furniture. Blessed to find such great deals. A kitchen renovation in July. Darren's skills finally put to use on our own home. The timeline matched the fund's mysterious venue improvement expenses. Thursday. I called 3 people. First, Sandra at the Piedmont State Department of Justice's Charity Fraud Division. She listened to my evidence summary and said she'd send an investigator if I could provide documentation. Second, Thomas at First County Savings Fraud Department. He pulled the recording of Monday's call. Ms. Hale, this appears to be attempted identity theft. We'll need to flag your accounts and implement additional security measures. Third, Marcus Reed from the Blue Ridge Ledger. We'd gone to high school together before I enlisted. Lauren, if even half of this is true, It's a huge story, but I'll need concrete proof. You'll have it, I promised. Just be ready to move fast. Friday morning brought more texts from family. A cousin's wedding invitation rescinded. Aunt Margaret calling me a disgrace to the Hale name. The Oak Chapel Facebook group posted photos from a prayer circle. For families torn apart by selfishness and pride, I saved every message, every post, every comment. The cruelty was evidence too. It showed motive why they needed that $15,000 so desperately. The walls were closing in on their scheme, even if they didn't know it yet. By Friday night, I had 60 pages of documentation. Bank statements, tax filings, receipts, photos, recordings, text messages, a timeline showing how the fund's money had disappeared into my parents' renovation projects and Dad's business account. I stood on the cabin's porch, where one bar of cell service flickered to life. The rain had stopped, leaving the air sharp with the smell of wet earth and rotting leaves. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl called, 7 days of leave, 7 days to build my case. And at the end of it, the Founders Dinner Ash Grove's biggest annual event, where my parents would receive their Community Servants Award for their work with the Hometown Heroes Fund. They thought they'd beaten me into submission. They thought shame and isolation would break me. They had no idea that silence was just another form of ammunition, and I'd been stockpiling it all week. Saturday morning at the cabin, I spread everything across the wooden floor like a battle map. The Hometown Heroes Fund documents on the left, my parents' spending timeline on the right, and in the center, the smoking gun I'd found at 2:43 a.m., while cross-referencing vendor payments. The fund had paid $36,000 to Mountain View Event Services over 18 months. The company existed only on paper registered to a P.O. box 2 towns over, but the signature on the registration matched Mom's handwriting from birthday cards she'd sent me. Same swooping C, same tight little E's. They'd created a shell company. I photographed every document with my phone and my camera, creating redundant backups. The morning light through the cabin windows was perfect, clear, bright, undeniable. Each receipt told a story. The July catering expense of $7,200 matched exactly with the charge date for their new living room set from Piedmont Furniture Gallery. The August venue decoration costs aligned with Ethan's suddenly successful car wash startup launch. My phone, carefully positioned in the one spot with reception, buzzed with a new message. Marcus from the Blue Ridge Ledger. Annual Founders Dinner is Thursday night. Your parents are listed as honorees. That what you're planning? I typed back, be there with a photographer. The deep dive continued. I pulled up 3 years of the fund's donor list's names I recognized from Oak Chapel, from Dad's construction jobs, from Mom's book club. Good people who thought they were helping veterans. Mr. Patterson had donated $5,000 after his grandson came back from deployment. Mrs. Rodriguez gave monthly $100 automatically deducted from her retirement check. They deserved to know. By Sunday afternoon, I'd built a presentation simple slides that anyone could understand. No accusations, no emotional language, just numbers and dates. Purchase orders that led nowhere. Vendor payments to companies that didn't exist. Event expenses for gatherings that happened in donated spaces with volunteer labor. Monday, I drove down the mountain to the Ash Grove Public Library, using their computers to avoid any digital trail back to my devices. I created a new email account and sent packages to 3 people: the State Attorney General's office, the IRS Nonprofit Division, and the chairman of the Hometown Heroes Fund Board, retired Police Chief William Barrett, a Vietnam veteran who'd started the fund to honor his fallen squad members. The email to Chief Barrett was personal. Sir, you served with honor. The fund you created deserves the same. The attached documents show systematic theft. I'm Sergeant Lauren Hale, daughter of your treasurer. I'll be at Thursday's dinner. The community deserves the truth before they hand out any more awards. Tuesday brought an unexpected ally. My neighbor, Mrs. Kim, had a Ring doorbell that captured part of Saturday's incident, Mom shoving me toward my car while screaming about ingratitude. The video was grainy, but the audio was clear. You think that uniform makes you better than us. You've been ours since birth. Every breath you take belongs to this family. Mrs. Kim emailed me the footage. I heard what they're saying about you at church. Honey, this isn't right. Wednesday, I assembled the final piece, using public records and the fund's own promotional materials. I created a timeline showing when donations came in versus when my parents made major purchases. The correlation was damning. March donation drive raised $42,000. March 23rd, Dad bought a new truck. June fundraiser brought in $18,000. June 12th, Mom booked a cruise to the Bahamas, a much-needed vacation from all her volunteer work. I practiced my speech in the cabin mirror. 90 seconds, no emotion, just facts. The Hometown Heroes Fund collected $217,000 over 3 years. $83,000 is unaccounted for in legitimate expenses. Vendor payments totaling $54,000 went to shell companies. Those companies trace back to the treasurer and her family. This is not about personal grievances. This is about stolen valor money taken from those who wanted to honor our veterans. Thursday morning, 5:13 m. I put on my dress uniform for the first time since the promotion ceremony 6 months ago. Every ribbon aligned perfectly, every crease sharp enough to cut. The bruise on my cheek had faded to yellow-green, but I didn't cover it. Let them see what their community servants did to their own daughter when she said no. I loaded everything into a locked briefcase, paper copies for Chief Barrett, USB drives for the authorities, my phone fully charged, ready to display evidence on the Civic Center's projection system if needed. They'd taught me in combat medicine that sometimes you had to cut deep to clean a wound. Tonight, I'd be the scalpel. The drive down from Cedar Run felt like approaching a deployment zone. Radio chatter the local station announcing tonight's celebration of community heroes. Weather report clear skies, unusual for October, traffic minimal. ETA to target 1800 hours. I stopped at the overlook above Ash Grove. The whole town spread out below like a map. Somewhere down there, my parents were probably getting ready, picking out their best clothes, practicing their acceptance speech. They had no idea their daughter had spent a week becoming their worst nightmare organized, documented, and armed with the truth. The sun set behind the mountains, painting the valley gold. Last light before the storm. The plan required 3 synchronized strikes, each one building on the last. I sat in my car outside the Civic Center at 6:30 p.m. Watching the early arrivals, and made the first call. First County Savings Fraud Department. Thomas speaking. Thomas, this is Lauren Hale. My parents will likely attempt another unauthorized withdrawal tomorrow morning. Can you flag it for recording? Already done. Ms. Hale, any attempt to access your accounts will trigger our fraud protocol and be recorded. We've also notified law enforcement as per your request. Strike 1 set. The banking trap was ready. Next, I dialed Sandra from the Piedmont State Department of Justice. Ms. Hale, we received your documentation. Our investigator can be at the venue in 40 minutes. We were planning to schedule an audit next week, but if they're receiving public recognition tonight, they're getting an award at 7:45. The entire donor base will be present. We'll be there, quietly. We'll need you to give us a signal before we intervene. Strike 2 confirmed. The legal machinery was in motion. The third call went to Chief Barrett. The old policeman's voice was grave. Lauren, I've reviewed everything you sent. It's solid. Lord help me, it's solid. I've called an emergency board meeting for 8 p.m., right after the award presentation. But I need to know, are you certain about going public? Sir, they stole from veterans, from families who sacrificed everything. The community has a right to know before another dollar goes missing. Then I'll need you to present your evidence to the board, publicly. Can you do that? Sergeant, I've been preparing all week. Sir, he paused. I knew your parents for 20 years, trusted them. This breaks my heart. Mine too, sir, but broken trust demands accountability. Strike 3 positioned. The board would be ready. I opened my briefcase one more time, checking the contents. The main folder contained 30 pages of the most damning evidence: bank transfers, shell company registrations, the forged vendor receipts. A USB drive held the full 60-page report, the recorded phone call, and Mrs. Kim's doorbell footage. My phone had everything backed up to 3 different cloud services, accessible with a few taps. The rehearsal in my head ran smooth. Walk in at 7:15. Find Marcus and his photographer. Position near the AV system. Wait for the award announcement. When Mom and Dad take the stage, connect my phone to the projection system I'd confirmed earlier that week. It used standard HDMI input. 90 seconds of facts while the evidence displays behind them, then step back and let the authorities handle the rest. I pulled out the emergency letter I'd written just in case something went wrong. It detailed everything, with instructions to release all evidence to the media and authorities. I'd already sent copies to Marcus and my military legal advisor at Pine Ridge. Insurance policy complete. 7:05 p.m. The parking lot was filling up. I recognized cars from all over Ash Grove, the mayor's SUV, school board members, half the congregation from Oak Chapel. They'd all come to celebrate their community heroes. They were about to witness something very different. I made one final preparation, pulling out my phone to test the presentation one more time. The slides were simple, devastating. Bank statement excerpts with the shell company payments highlighted, the forged signatures. The furniture store receipts dated the same days as Veteran Emergency Fund withdrawals. Each slide was numbered with a document reference code that matched the packets I'd prepared for the authorities. Marcus texted, "In position, photographer ready. Board members are asking where Chief Barrett is. He'll be there at 8. Tell them to wait." I adjusted my uniform one last time. The sergeant stripes on my sleeve caught the streetlight. 3 chevrons, earned through years of service, of learning when to follow orders and when to stand up against wrong. Tonight was definitely the latter. My watch read 7:12. Time to move. But first, I sent one final message to the family group chat that I'd been removed from but could still access through an old tablet. You wanted $15,000? Tonight, you'll get something much more valuable: accountability. See you at the Civic Center. Your daughter, whether you claim me or not. Lauren. I locked my car and walked toward the Civic Center's glowing entrance. Inside, I could hear laughter, the clink of glasses, the warm buzz of community gathering. In 13 minutes, my parents would be called to the stage. In 15 minutes, their house of cards would collapse. And in approximately 23 minutes, Chief Barrett's investigators would make it official. The automatic doors swooshed open. Showtime. Inside the lobby, the first person I saw was Ethan, his face going pale when he spotted my uniform. He started toward me, but I held up my phone, finger poised over the record button. He stopped, uncertain. Smart boy. He was learning. The main hall beckoned, full of round tables with blue tablecloths, centerpieces of white carnations, and at the front, a small stage with a podium and projection screen, currently displaying Celebrating Our Community Heroes. Soon it would display something else entirely. My evidence folder felt solid in my hand, my phone ready in my pocket. 3 strikes, perfectly timed, about to land. The war for truth was about to begin. The Ash Grove Civic Center hummed with warmth and conversation. Round tables dressed in blue cloth filled the space. Soft country music played through the speakers, and the smell of buffet food mixed with perfume and cologne. The backdrop behind the stage read, "Honoring Those Who Serve," in gold letters. My parents sat at the head table, Mom in her best pearl necklace, Dad in his one good suit, both glowing with anticipation. 7:42 p.m. The MC, Pastor Davidson from Oak Chapel, tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, it's time to recognize some very special members of our community." I positioned myself near the AV control panel. Marcus caught my eye from across the room, his photographer already lifting her camera. 3 board members sat at a corner table, checking their phones, probably wondering about Chief Barrett's emergency meeting. "Our next award, Pastor Davidson continued, goes to a couple who exemplifies selfless service. Through their work with the Hometown Heroes Fund, Darren and Colleen Hale have raised over $200,000 for our veterans and their families. Applause filled the room. Mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, always the performer. Dad stood, offering her his hand. They moved toward the stage like they owned it, waving to friends, basking in the admiration. Before we present this award, the pastor said, let's take a moment to appreciate their dedication with a brief video tribute. This wasn't part of the program. My hand moved to my phone, ready to override whatever they'd planned. But the screen lit up with something unexpected: photos of veterans at fund events, families receiving checks, grateful testimonials, all real people who'd been helped with whatever money actually made it through. Mom took the microphone. Thank you all so much. Serving this community alongside our veterans has been the greatest honor of our lives. We do this work not for recognition, but because it's what family does. We take care of our own. My finger found the HDMI port. One smooth motion, and my phone was connected. Speaking of family, Mom continued, her voice catching slightly. Our daughter Lauren is here tonight in her uniform. Stand up, honey. Let everyone see what a hero looks like. The spotlight found me before I could react. Harsh and white. The entire room turned. Some started clapping, then stopped when they saw my face set hard. No smile. The fading bruise still visible on my cheek. I walked to the stage, each step measured in military precision. The room fell silent. I don't need a spotlight, I said into the sudden quiet, my voice carrying without the microphone. But some things do need to be brought to light. I pressed play on my phone. The projection screen behind my parents changed. First slide, the Hometown Heroes Fund official deposit records. Second slide, Mountain View Event Services registration. Mom's signature clear as day. Third slide, bank transfers from fund to shell company. $36,000 highlighted in yellow. The Hometown Heroes Fund, I began, my practiced words flowing steady. Collected $217,000 over 3 years. $83,000 is unaccounted for through legitimate expenses. Mom's face went white. Dad started toward me, but froze when the next slide appeared: the furniture store receipt, dated the same day as a veteran emergency withdrawal. Vendor payments totaling $54,000 went to shell companies that exist only on paper. Those companies traced directly back to "You ungrateful," Dad's voice boomed, but the next slide cut him off. It was the audio waveform of the recorded call to the bank, with the transcript below. I tapped play. Mom's recorded voice filled the civic center. She owes us from the moment she was born. Every breath she takes belongs to this family. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a glass. The photographer's camera clicked rapidly. I continued, voice never wavering. This is not about personal grievances. This is about money stolen from those who wanted to honor our veterans. From Mr. Patterson, who gave $5,000 after his grandson's deployment. From Mrs. Rodriguez, whose $100 monthly donations come from her fixed retirement income. Both names caused heads to turn. Mr. Patterson stood up slowly, his face reddening. Mrs. Rodriguez covered her mouth with her hand. That's enough, Mom shrieked, grabbing for my phone. But the slides had already been set to auto-advance. The next one showed their cruise booking. Then Dad's new truck registration. Then the kitchen renovation permits, all dated within days of major fund deposits. The side door opened. Sandra from the Department of Justice walked in with 2 other officials, their badges visible. Behind them, Chief Barrett entered with 3 board members. This concludes my presentation, I said, stepping back. The authorities and the fund's board can take it from here. The room erupted. Voices raised in shock and anger. Someone shouted about wanting their donation back. Pastor Davidson stood frozen at the podium, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Dad lunged toward me, but 2 things happened simultaneously. Marcus's photographer raised her camera. the flash going off like lightning, and Chief Barrett's voice cut through the chaos. Darren Hale, Colleen Hale, by the authority of the Hometown Heroes Fund Board and pending investigation by the state of Piedmont, you are hereby removed from all positions with the fund, effective immediately. Please surrender any fund-related materials in your possession. Sandra from the Department of Justice stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chaos. Mr. and Mrs. Hale, we need you to come with us. You're being detained for suspected charity fraud and attempted identity theft. This is ridiculous, Dad shouted, his face purple with rage. She's lying. Our own daughter. Sir, we have the documentation, Sandra interrupted. The shell company registrations, the falsified vendor receipts, and the recorded attempt to access Ms. Hale's bank account without authorization. Please don't make this more difficult. 2 officers flanked my parents. Mom's pearl necklace caught the light as she turned wildly, looking for sympathy in the crowd. She found none. Mrs. Rodriguez was crying. Mr. Patterson's hands were clenched into fists. You did this! Mom hissed at me as the officer guided her past. You destroyed your own family. No, I replied, loud enough for everyone to hear. You destroyed a fund meant for veterans. I just showed everyone the receipts. Chief Barrett took the microphone, his Vietnam veteran pin gleaming on his lapel. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this disruption. The board has been made aware of serious financial irregularities. Effective immediately. All fund assets are frozen pending a full forensic audit. So, someone from the back shouted, what about our donations? Every legitimate donation will be accounted for, Chief Barrett assured them. We're bringing in an independent accounting firm. Any funds that were misappropriated will be pursued through legal channels. The Hometown Heroes Fund will continue, but under completely new management. The officers led my parents toward the exit. Dad tried one more time, turning back to the crowd. We've served this community for 20 years. Don't let her lies. The next slide on the screen cut him off. It was a check from the fund, signed by Mom, made out to Mountain View Event Services for $12,000. The memo line read, Q3 Emergency Veteran Housing. Below it, the shell company's registration with Mom's signature. The comparison was undeniable. The room fell silent again except for the camera clicks from Marcus's photographer and several people recording on their phones. Chief Barrett continued, I've been informed that criminal charges will likely be filed. The State Attorney General's office is also opening an investigation. Anyone who donated to the fund will be contacted as part of the audit process. I stood there in my uniform, watching it all unfold. The room that had been warm with celebration now felt cold, fractured. People whispered to each other, some already pulling out phones to spread the news. I heard fragments always suspected. Poor Lauren. How could they? Ethan appeared at my elbow, his face twisted with rage. You happy now you destroyed everything? I destroyed nothing, I said quietly. I just turned on the lights. He raised his hand like father, like son, but Chief Barrett's voice stopped him. Young man, I'd think very carefully about your next action. Assault charges on top of your family's current situation wouldn't be wise. Ethan's hand dropped. He spat at my feet instead, then stormed out. Chief Barrett approached me. Sergeant Hale, the board would like to make you an offer. Sir, we're restarting the fund with a clean slate. We need someone with integrity to help rebuild trust. Would you consider joining our new oversight committee? I looked around the room at the angry donors, the confused community members, the empty head table where my parents had sat minutes ago. Sir, I appreciate the offer, but my duty is at Pine Ridge. However, I reached into my pocket, pulling out a check I'd written that morning. I'd like to make the first donation to the Reformed Fund. $5,000. Gasps echoed through the room. It was a third of what my parents had tried to steal from me. This isn't about revenge, I announced to the room. It's about restoration. The veterans this fund was meant to help, they deserve better. We all do. Chief Barrett took the check with shaking hands. This is extraordinary. Sergeant, no, Sir, it's just right. Sandra approached with paperwork. Ms. Hale, we'll need you to provide a formal statement tomorrow. The recorded call and your documentation have been invaluable. Your parents are being processed now. Given the evidence, they're looking at significant charges: fraud over $50,000, identity theft, and embezzlement from a charitable organization. What kind of sentence? If convicted on all counts, 5 to 10 years, possibly more, and they'll be ordered to pay full restitution. The Civic Center was emptying now, people filing out in shocked clusters. Marcus appeared with his photographer. Lauren, this is going to be front page tomorrow. Do you have any comment for the article? I thought for a moment. Just this: the Hometown Heroes Fund was created to honor those who served. Tonight, we're returning it to that mission. My parents called me ungrateful for refusing to give them money, but gratitude isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in duty. And sometimes, duty means standing up to those who would exploit others' generosity, even if they're your own family. The photographer snapped one last photo: me in uniform, standing alone in the now empty Civic Center, the projection screen behind me still showing the evidence that had brought down my parents' empire of lies. The parking lot was nearly empty by 10:45 p.m. A thin mountain mist had rolled in, coating everything in moisture that glowed orange under the sodium lights. I sat in my car, engine off, listening to the tick of cooling metal and the distant sound of a freight train horn echoing through the valley. My phone vibrated constantly, messages I didn't read, calls I didn't answer. The silence in the car felt more honest than any conversation could be right now. Through the windshield, I could see my reflection in the Civic Center's dark windows, still in uniform, sergeant stripes catching the light. The same uniform my parents had used as a prop in their performance, now witness to their downfall. I reached over and switched my phone to silent, then placed it face down in the cup holder. Not airplane mode, not powered off, just silent. They could rage into the void all they wanted. I was done listening. The drive home took me through downtown Ash Grove one last time, past First County Savings, where tomorrow they'd have a recording of attempted fraud, past Oak Chapel, where the gossip would already be spreading like wildfire through prayer chains and phone trees, past the courthouse, where my parents would likely stand trial in a few months. The familiar weight of my apartment key felt like an anchor as I unlocked my door. Everything was exactly as I'd left it a week ago, the spiral notebook still on the table, my coffee cup in the sink, yesterday's uniform still draped over the chair. But I wasn't the same person who'd left this space. I sat down at my small dining table and opened the notebook to a fresh page. At the top, I wrote October 19th, Day of Reckoning, complete. Below it, the numbers that mattered: money saved from exploitation, $15,000 fraud, exposed, $83,000 restitution to be ordered. Full amount trust, rebuilt with community, priceless family lost. 3. Integrity maintained, everything. The pen scratched against paper as I added one final line: cost of silence too high to pay. I closed the notebook and walked to the window. Ash Grove spread out below, porch lights and street lamps creating constellations in the darkness. Somewhere out there, my parents were being processed. Somewhere, Ethan was probably drinking and cursing my name. Somewhere, veterans who'd been cheated would finally get justice. My reflection in the window stared back, tired but unbroken. The bruise on my cheek had almost completely faded, just a shadow of yellow-green that would be gone in days. The uniform hung perfectly, every ribbon and stripe exactly where it should be. I looked like what I was, a soldier who'd completed her mission. The coffee maker gurgled as I set it for tomorrow's automatic brew, 0530. Same as always. My shift at Pine Ridge would start at 0700. Back to normal duty, back to serving with honor, back to a life where family couldn't reach into my pockets or my peace. I pulled off the uniform jacket and hung it carefully in the closet. Tomorrow it would go back to being work clothes instead of armor. The dress shoes came off next, replaced with comfortable slippers. The transformation from Sergeant Hale to just Lauren felt like shedding weight. One last time, I picked up my phone. 347 notifications. I deleted them all without reading, then opened a new message to Captain Morrison. Personal matter resolved, returning to duty tomorrow as scheduled. His response came immediately. Glad to hear it, Sergeant. Welcome back. The apartment fell quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of that same freight train, now miles away, carrying its load through the Appalachian night. I sat in my single comfortable chair. No television on, no music playing, just the peace of silence I'd bought with truth. They'd called me ungrateful, said I owed them for being born, for being raised, for existing. But gratitude isn't a debt you pay in dollars, and love isn't supposed to come with a price tag. I'd learned that the hard way, taught it back even harder. I stood and walked to my bedroom, past the empty picture frames that once held family photos. Maybe someday I'd fill them with new memories, friends from the base, fellow medics, people who understood that loyalty flows both ways and respect is earned, not demanded. The bed was still made with military corners, tight enough to bounce a quarter. I sat on the edge and unlaced my boots, setting them perfectly parallel beside the nightstand. Everything in its place, everything accountable, everything clean. Through the bedroom window, I could see the first hints of dawn starting to lighten the eastern mountains. A new day coming, free from the weight of family who saw me as nothing more than a withdrawal slip. I didn't buy a family with $15,000, but tonight, in that civic center with the whole town watching, I'd bought something infinitely more valuable. I bought back my own life. The last thought before sleep took me was simple and complete. I'd rather stand alone with integrity than sit at a table built on lies. And for the first time in 32 years, I was exactly where I belonged, not in anyone's debt, not in anyone's pocket, just free. Tomorrow would come with its own challenges, but tonight, in the silence I'd earned, I finally owned the most precious thing of all myself. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment and let me know what city or country you're in so we can connect. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing your own thoughts about family, boundaries, and standing up for what's right. Your experiences matter, and I'd love to hear them in the comments below.